Hiya folks, it's Jocelyn. Welcome back to my channel. So with the holidays coming up, you might be trying to buy a book for yourself or for someone in your life who also reads. And especially if they are someone who reads a lot, finding a book that they haven't heard of is always a bit of a challenge. So that's where I come in. I personally love seeking out all sorts of new titles. I follow so many people who, like myself, really scour the corners of the internet to find things that not everyone knows or talks about. And in past videos, I've made lists of underread or underhyped books. Since making those, I've heard more and more people talk about their discomfort with the idea of a book that's underhyped or underrated. So for today, I wanted to talk about spotlighting 2020 books that you might not have heard about yet. I think it's pretty easy to say that people whose books have come out in 2020 have had more issues than the average year. All of these books came out in 2020 when this year has been extremely difficult and have fewer than 1,000 ratings. So yeah, this is pretty self-explanatory. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about what I loved about these books, and I'll have all the titles down in the description box as well as links to Libro.fm and bookshop.org. So before we get on to the actual 10 titles, I have 3 runners-ups or honorary mentions, and they are all concluding books to a series that I have loved before. The first is A Mixture of Mischief by Meriano, which is the 3rd book in the Love, Sugar, Magic series. This is Own Voices Mexican-American about a bruja named Leo, and it's all about baking magic. It is so very sweet. 3 books in the series. I loved all of them. There's also The Iron Will of Genie Lo by F.C. Yee. This is the 2nd book in the duology, the 1st book being The Epic Crush of Genie Lo. This is an Own Voices Chinese-American story about a young girl named Genie Lo, who one day starts to fall in with Chinese mythological beings. Finally, there is Sal and Gabby Fix the Universe, another end to a duology. The 1st book is Sal and Gabby Break the Universe by Carlos Hernandez. This is Own Voices Cuban-American about a young middle schooler named Sal who has the ability to visit other universes and all of the calamities that come from that. So yeah, I didn't want to officially put these on this list. I wanted to make this books that you can start with, either because they're standalones or starts of the series, but I love all 3 of those books and those series, so highly recommend them, and I really wanted to mention them as well. Okay, so the first book that we're going to officially talk about is The Dreamweaver by Reina Luz Alegre. This is a debut middle grade contemporary story, and we follow a young girl who moves in with her grandfather to the Jersey Shore, who owns a bowling alley. The relationship between Zoe and her father especially is one that I think is so interesting and a dynamic that I don't see that much of. I also love that she's mostly grown up with men in her family, and now as a 12-year-old is starting to explore friendships with girls for the first time who are actually becoming close friends with her. Between the bowling club and the love for her grandpa and all of her issues being both white and Cuban and what this means for Zoe, I really saw a young me in her a lot of the time, and I think this would be a fantastic book for any middle grade contemporary readers. Next, I have Anna on the Edge by A.J. Sass. This is another debut middle grade, and this is about a young figure skater named Anna. One day at the rink, Anna is called for the first time by he, him pronouns and has a thought like, oh, I kind of like that. Throughout the book, Anna does discover that she is non-binary. However, she does decide to continue to use she, her pronouns by the end, so those are what I'm going to be referring to her as well. And I think this book really shines in the discussions about femininity and masculinity, especially in a sport like figure skating, which is so traditionally gendered. Anyway, I thought this was fantastic. It reminded me so much about why I loved watching figure skating growing up, and the friendships and family relationships in here are very well done and wholesome. I think this is also the perfect time of year to be reading this because figure skating and winter is just the most natural of pairings, but honestly, you could get around to reading it anytime. It is that good of a book. Then I have 13s by Kate Alice Marshall. This is the 2nd book I've read by Kate Alice Marshall, and both of them have been horror. This one, however, is a middle grade book, and we follow 3 kids who all turn 13 on Halloween, and there are some rather suspicious things happening in this town. I would definitely recommend this to readers who have liked other middle grade horror. I would also say people who really enjoy Gravity Falls will get a lot out of this. I feel like a lot of the structure of many Gravity Falls episodes felt similar to what I was getting in 13s. The mystery around 13s I think is super well done, and the tension within this book, because it takes place mostly on Halloween as the town is sort of hunting for those children, is so very good. But honestly, this is one of those perfect like one sitting scare books. It's very easy to get through, extremely compulsive, and it's spooky, which is what you usually want out of a horror book. Then we have Blazewrath Games by Amparo Ortiz. I was shocked to see that this one made this list because all of the other Latinx readers I follow have been screaming about this one to the high heavens. But this is another debut, this one YA and from a Puerto Rican author, and follows the Puerto Rican Blazewrath team, which is a sport that involves riding dragons. Honestly, this book has everything. Sports fantasy, dragons, magic wielders, having to save the world and also play for your country. It's so well done and filled with so many wonderful characters. I also really love the identity crisis that Lana goes through. She is both Puerto Rican and American and actually grows up in the United States and is the only one from her team who was not actually living in Puerto Rico when she signs up. Her Spanish isn't the best, she feels like a little bit of a fraud, and I love the way Amparo talks about this in this book and lets Lana explore those things in a very organic feeling way. Anyway, I have it on good authority that book 2 is going to have even more glitter, so if that doesn't get you excited to start this, I don't know what will. Then I have Maya and the Rising Dark by Reina Barron. This is a middle grade urban fantasy book that takes place in Chicago and follows Maya as she realizes that her family and her town is maybe more closely related to the Orisha gods that she has grown up hearing about than she'd originally thought. Weird things start happening, Maya starts having some strange dreams, and then her father goes missing. If you are an adventure fantasy lover and one of the millions of people who has loved the Percy Jackson series and other similar ideas to that, this is going to be your newest obsession. It's fun, it's fast-paced, there's a twist on the chosen one trope, and I really love the way that Barron stresses the importance of community and what it means to be heroic. Then I have Ava Evergreen, Semi-Magical Witch by Julie Abe. This one's pitched as for fans of Kiki's Delivery Service, which is so very apparent when you read it, and it's one of the reasons that I loved it so much. Ava Evergreen comes from a very strong line of witches. Her mother is renowned, and when Ava turns 13, it is her turn to go somewhere else and become the town witch. However, unlike her mother, Ava doesn't have that much magic, and so to play to her strengths, she has to be really clever about how she uses it. Kiki's Delivery Service fans, this is the book for you. It's also the start of a series and another middle grade debut. This is a really quick and very sweet book, and the way that magic is used for rhymes also does make me think that younger middle grade readers will also get a lot out of this, even if Ava's age is a little bit further from their own. But if you love someone who wants to read about a girl and a town who come to know each other and support each other, I couldn't recommend anything before this. It is just so darling. Next, I have Disfigured by Amanda Leduc. I'm gonna say maybe this one hasn't been doing as well because it's a small Canadian press, but this book is one of the best nonfictions I've read this year. Amanda herself has cerebral palsy, but she talks about all different types of bodies and abilities portrayed within folklore, within Disney movies, within just general pop culture things that we have shared over and over again. And I think this book does such a good job at bringing a very accessible and introductory level of disability rights activism to larger audiences, by talking about things that are just so deeply rooted in Western cultures and histories especially. The amount of different people who are interviewed here and the amount of different stories that are talked about, I think is really impressive. If you love fairy tales and folklore, I think this is an absolute must for your bookshelf. And I think it's great both for personal resources as well as academic. Next, I have Untamed by Silvia Moreno-Garcia. This is a noir set in 1970s Mexico, where a young local woman named Viridiana gets involved with these American tourists, and then one of them ends up dead. If you know anything about Silvia Moreno-Garcia, you know that she can create atmosphere. Obviously, this book has been hugely overshadowed by her other 2020 release, Mexican Gothic, but I do think both books have a lot of similarities, and maybe that's just because I've read so many Silvia Moreno-Garcia books at this point that I have found patterns that I expect in each one of her works. But all I really have to say about this one is if you want a noir, if you want a murder mystery, if you want some truly vile humans, honestly, you can't go wrong with this one. Then I had They Said This Would Be Fun by Eternity Martis. This is a memoir from a Toronto woman that mostly follows her in her college years, where she found herself in such an incredibly white space. Eternity Martis is Black and South Asian, though she mostly grew up with her mother's South Asian side of the family. So she talks about what colorism looks like in her family and in society at large, microaggressions and racism that came from other people of color as well as from white people at schools, sexual assault, partner abuse. She sort of hits it all, and it's really focusing on that late teenage, early 20 years. This can be a very difficult book to read because of all the topics handled, but Martis also does use some lightness. She makes quite a few jokes and is sarcastic a lot of the time. I actually listened to this one on audiobook, and I do suggest it because I think hearing someone read their own memoir is really helpful to figure out their tone. I haven't read that many memoirs set in undergrad, and I really like this look at this very particular moment and the way she came in and then the way it shaped her later on. The final book I'm talking about today is Harley in the Sky by Akemi Dawn Bowman. This must be Akemi Dawn Bowman's third or fourth book at this point, but it's the first I read of hers. It's my understanding that she very often talks about mixed-race white and Japanese characters as well as those dealing with mental illness, and this continues that trend. Both of Harley's parents are mixed-raced white and Asian, and so she in turn is Irish, Italian, Japanese, and Chinese, and her struggles of feeling like she's only a quarter of one thing and not a whole thing hit really close to home. Harley's family owns a circus and she wants nothing more than to be an aerialist, but her dad just will not allow it. So she makes a really impulsive decision to run away from her family, effectively betraying them, and join a competitor circus. This is another YA that I love for its messiness. Harley can be very selfish even when she does struggle with understanding that she's acting selfishly. There's also some really frank friendship discussions, and Harley and her oldest friend have some real difficulties communicating that I think are portrayed wonderfully. Plus, there's just the circus. I've found so few books that really capture what the circus means to me in the same way that this one did. I love how passionate she is about her own work, about doing her best, but then also just the pure magic of the circus at large and watching other people all come together to create this otherworldly experience. Anyway, this one was fantastic, and I would definitely recommend this book for YA readers who want a contemporary that almost feels like it's a fantasy. So I think that's going to be it for me today. I hope these 10 plus books are things that you're interested in, and hopefully there's at least one on here that you haven't heard of that piqued your interest. Let me know down below if you've read any of these books and have other recommendations for books that feel like them. And if you're ever on Goodreads and sorting your books by least amount of ratings, let me know what your favorite one is with the lowest number of ratings. But thank you all so much for watching, and I'll be back with another video shortly. Bye!